I am not what I think I am, and I am not what you think I am, but I am what I think I am, said Charles Cooley. Now, meditate on that for a second. Do you really think you are what you truly are? Or are you something like what the society wants you to be? Or things like other people in your life, Hollywood, or Instagram is kind of shaping what you really are and how you show up in the world? Looking into this can open up doorways of self realization for most of us. And this is why today I have someone very special to talk to you about some things where you can open up this doorway and understand yourselves better. Or maybe just raise a hand to join a community of people to guide you in being one of the best versions of yourself. My guest on the show today has had many roles in his life, which includes being a DJ, writer, a singer, a producer, a musician, a CEO, and now the founding partner of the International Academy of Universal Self Mastery. Dylan Olson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, CJ. I'm happy to be here, man.
I'm happy to have you on the show today, and I've been looking forward to our chat for a long time now. Now, you've done so many things. Talk to me about your background and tell me, how does a writer, singer start an academy of self mastery?
Um, Thank you for asking. It's honestly the Academy of Self Mastery was a very it was synchronicity at its best. So I started DJing and getting into production when I'm 29. I turned 30 this year, so about 10 years ago I was 19, and just was doing it from my laptop in my dorm room in college, and started making like really weird trance music, and then started getting into EDM events and doing those kinds of things. And uh and so over and then I really got in. I was in a band, started writing when I was like professionally at like 25, 26, where I was a freelancer. And um but the whole time I really struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. And it was a really, my 20s were just, it was rife with just this very dark sense of self-loathing and self-inadequacy, and wanting to fill that void and escape myself. And about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I experienced, I've had many awakenings. I call them, I actually just finished a chapter in a book that's going to be published later this year. And my chapter is called Being is the Nature of Becoming. And in this chapter, I talk about what I call the threshold of uncertainty. And the threshold of uncertainty is basically, how I describe it is when the pain of what you're currently experiencing surpasses the fear of the unknown. And usually, when that threshold is crossed, that's when we will decide to change. And that's when we will allow and surrender to source, surrender to ourselves, surrender to um, our calling and our purpose and love, to allow ourselves to transform. And so I've experienced that point a few times, but then it was this kind of this shifting between revelation and revisitation, which I think is how many of us, our process of transformation and growth occurs. We realize something, we learn new information, and then we might take it back to something we knew to apply it, or we revisit this old situation or old pattern with a new lens, and it's never the same that we experienced it in the way before. And so I got a DUI, and it at first it didn't, I was in the victim mindset. Oh, cops fucked me, banana, like doing that stuff.
Everything's happening to me. Yeah.
Yep. And but then there was just this click where it was, I once I admitted that I had created it. Like, it wasn't anybody else's fault. No one else shoved liquor down my throat and told me to get behind the wheel of a car. That was my doing.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, I actually asked for it in a roundabout way, where I was I was driving one day because I DJ'd at a bar. So I got a DUI leaving the bar that I was DJing at, and but I was on my way there one day. I was talking to the universe, and I was like, I don't want to continue to live this way, but I'm too much of a bitch to change it, to choose something different. I was like, just do something for me. And the universe was like, okay, here you go. and and it took me like a month to realize that. But once I admitted that it was me, I accepted that it was me that created it. That's when I became the solution. And so when that
Mm-hmm.
happened, I just kind of removed myself. I removed myself from my idea of myself. I allowed myself to just relinquish and shed all those things that I held true about myself that weren't true. They were just ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, and many of them too were subconscious false beliefs, you know, that we are instilled in those formative years. And so I really started doing the inner work. You know, I changed my lifestyle. I changed my eating habits. I got sober. I started working out regularly. I started getting really good sleep. I was reading every day, meditating every day. And so when I changed my value system and I changed my lifestyle, it just transformed everything. You know, I had more clarity. I had more energy. My creativity was even better. Um, and so then about, you know, a year, less than a year into that, um, I received a message from an old friend, Lisa, and she had been the MC at a spiritual expo that I had been a keynote speaker at 2 or 3 years before,
Mm-hmm.
and here in Boise. And she reached out to me just telling me of this opportunity to be a part of this new platform that was being built. And again, this was something that I had asked for because I had actually been talking to my mother a little bit before, and I was like, man, you know, I want to do my music, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not entirely it. That's not entirely my purpose. That's a big piece, but that's not everything. And I was like, and then I really want to help people, but I don't necessarily want to go back to school and get a psychology degree. But then I've also been, you know, over the past few years, I've been really cultivating my men's work. So there was this, I was like, but there's something there. I just don't know can't put my finger on it. And then this opportunity presented itself. And I got invited as a founding faculty member um, to teach my authentic masculine work.
Mm-hmm.
But rapidly, you know, being a writer, I was like, well, I can write press releases. I'd love to just, you know, help out with this. So I started writing press releases for the Academy pro bono, and was just like, yeah, I want to help. And and then I got a seat on the board of directors soon after that, which is now we refer to it as the council. Board of directors was a little old world for us. And so in the
Mm-hmm.
we like council. And now I moved from that to from being a founding faculty to being on the board of directors to now I'm one of the primary partners in the council. And and so I work basically. I'm me and Aisha Hogan is the founder and visionary, and so her and I
Mm-hmm.
work you know, every single day on the site, working with faculty, uploading courses. Right now we're doing a lot of reworking. We're actually preparing for our relaunch or it's in June, the end of June. We'll be doing it for our summer solstice launch, and yeah, it's just been incredible.
Yeah, that's been an incredible and a fast journey, I must say. Like
Yeah.
rising up all those positions after having that kind of realization. And one of the things that caught my attention when you described your beautiful story is that it up to the point where you did not take either a responsibility where you didn't hold yourself like said, hey, this is all happening because of me and I am responsible and I am accountable. Things didn't start to shift for you. And when you look at people all around the world, a lot of people are in either denial or are escaping their reality, saying that this is XYZ, whatever the situation is, has happened because of, my grandfather, my girlfriend, the the guy who bullied me at school. And I must agree that some part of that story is correct, because all of those things, like you mentioned, the subconscious programming that we're exposed to at an earlier part of our life, and all these things do make a difference. But talk to me, why taking ownership or responsibility makes such a big difference.
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. Uh, in my experience, because I was an escape artist for so long in my life. Like I was like Houdini. I did not I did not want to be with myself. I did not love myself.
May I
Um,
ask why?
yes, absolutely. So my it was all in my early childhood years. I mean, my dad committed suicide when I was 6, and then a
Mm-hmm.
year after that, I experienced molestation from these older boys who lived down the street. They were, I guess, neighbor friends of mine, but they were molested. So it kind of ended up being this telephone game of molestation
Mm-hmm.
that kind of just came out into our neighborhood, and so at a very young age, I mean, at the age of 7, I experienced, you know, every fear and deep-seated false belief about myself that I could. Like there was shame and guilt, which I mean, I hardly understood what those were because I was still an innocent child. But shame and
Mm-hmm.
guilt, abandonment, rejection, uh, just in this immense sense of fear, and I just shut myself off. Like I determined that it was unsafe for me to be myself and to express myself and love myself, and so I closed up shop. And
Mm-hmm.
so I never felt at home in myself. I always felt like there was something wrong with me. And so it started off with like video games, like that's how I would escape. I'm like, ooh, video
Mm-hmm.
games, okay. And then all of a sudden puberty hits, and now I'm escaping and in pornography and video games. And then all of a sudden, um and I grew up Christian as well, so that was of my own accord. I would go to church,
Mm-hmm.
but that instilled an even deeper sense of fear in me. Fear of
Mm-hmm.
not being good enough in the eyes of God, fear of not being accepted within this this not closed, but this community.
Community.
And and then 18, 19 rolls around, and that's when I discovered drugs and alcohol. And so since I didn't, and I would say that some of the biggest false beliefs that were instilled in me in those formative years were I'm undeserving of love. Um, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough, these are false beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that so many of us have. And, uh, and I just, since I was always operating out of those beliefs, I mean, I sabotaged like every relationship I would get into. Um, I didn't take care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually. Since I didn't believe I was deserving of love, I always behaved in a way that I perceived as undeserving of love. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so yeah, I operated out of that for a long time. And even when I started doing the work, even now, I'll still notice things pop up in, whether they're a thought or it's an emotional pattern, noticing those things rise to the surface. Except that now I have a lot more compassion for myself and a lot more love and understanding for myself. So when those things pop up, it's no longer like I don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll notice it, I'll
Yeah.
experience it, I'll give it the space to be there, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't mean I know it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past, that stuff would come up and I would just let it take the wheel. And when it would take the wheel, that's when I'd go on, a cocaine, heroin, booze bender for 2 weeks and,
Mm-hmm.
not sleep, not eat. And then, I'd basically, lose my jobs, and I would, uh, go fuck a bunch of people and, just be an absolute wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, then I would feel guilty and ashamed. So then I'd be down and out for another month or two. And it was just
Going down the rabbit hole again.
Oh yeah, and I would do, this was just this cycle I found myself in. And once I it was a lot of radical self-honesty is really what pulled me out, is when I admitted that I was believing in my own lies, that I was believing in my own bullshit. I was the one doing this. Once I did that, I couldn't feel sorry for myself. I couldn't make excuses. It wasn't like, oh, well, it was just like, shit, I did all this. This
Mhm.
nobody else. Like, I chose this. I created these circumstances. No one else created these circumstances for me. Like, this was my choosing.
Mhm.
And so once I realized that, and not only just realize, because we can realize things and not do anything about it. But once I realized it and I took action on it, that was when things really started to change. And then I just grew to love myself more. And even in now, when I have days that maybe there's always days where we struggle a little bit, and we're human. And
Mhm.
I tend to forget that. I'll be like, why am I having this experience? And my partner, she'll actually have to be like, you are human, this is okay. I'm like, oh, okay, you're
Mhm.
right. And but yeah, it's like, even on those days, I still allow myself to be human. And whereas in the past I wouldn't. It would be like, I should be a lot more perfect than this, or I'm not even deserving of this good stuff I
Mhm.
have.
Man, your story is incredible, and I really thank you for sharing this on the platform, because your story has so many different components to it, which a lot of people in today's world can relate to, right? A lot of us have been looking down on ourselves. A lot of the times, our families have been looking down on us, or our teachers have been looking down on us, or we have had this point where we had to escape the world, or is just so multifactorial. And it is really unfortunate that now, with the whole science and technology, we understand that physical abuse to a child can be somewhat damaging to their brain. But then there's also the non physical components to it, right? And one of the things that I normally see around is, like, if you talk to a parent, a teacher, advisor, they will, if you're being physically abused, chances are that people are going to have a very different approach than from what you have been, like, non-physically abused, like, let's say, sexually abused or psychologically abused. People tend to often have this thing saying that, oh, get over it. But that doesn't really work, because we know from evidence that children who have these kind of issues will go up and grow up and have some kind of psychiatric problems. You mentioned that you were going through shame and guilt, but there are so many more complex emotions that could come in. There could be anger. There could You could move on to some other things like anxiety, depression, in extreme cases, suicides, PTSDs, and even like aggression can be a part of it. And now, when I'm thinking, some of these people who have been researched on things like dissociative personality disorders would also have a certain childhood which is a bit similar to this. Now, thank you for sharing that story, because, and I want everyone who's listening right now to have that positive approach, have that positive mindset like Dylan's. You get into shit, and then you've got to figure it out, and you have to come out of it. And it's not like, it's, if you want to stay there for all your life, then it's your choice. But you know that you're the only one who's responsible, and no one's, I mean, if you're lucky and this does happen, there will be some angel who will come and save you, but most of the times you have to take the first step. Now, when we're talking about so many things about the world, and then let's talk about stereotypes, right? Now, we always pay attention to stereotypes when it comes to race, to culture, to color, but we hardly pay any attention to gender specific stereotyping. Now, women have a lot of stereotyping, but also, funnily enough, men have a lot of stereotyping as well. Now, I found a
Yes.
study that said, like, if a man was working in an office and was extremely stressed and probably cried at work, they would have, like, people would interpret that as the man being weak when you compare it to the women, right? And this is a type of stereotyping. I mean, a lot of, or maybe one third, almost one third of the guys have been taught to stay strong and be a man and suck it up. But then all of these things kind of backfire in a certain way. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work with the Authentic Brotherhood. So tell us about what the Authentic Brotherhood is, and tell us, why do we still live in this world where we're trying to pretend to be something which probably, our ancestors told us to be.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. It's so the Authentic Brotherhood is basically that's like my freebie. That's my free little nugget, and
Mm-hmm.
it's but it started. I started the Authentic Brotherhood as it was initially the Authentic Masculine. That's like my flagship program. But then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I want something. I want the Authentic Masculine to be my program, and the Authentic Brotherhood's going to be kind of my stepping stone for people. And so the Authentic Brotherhood is basically my answer to a question, and that question um, is there a better way for men to be men? And what does that way look like? Because and I really noticed it about I first I was inspired to do it because I didn't grow up with a solid father figure, a solid male
Mm-hmm.
role model in my life, and all the men that were in my life, unfortunately, weren't that good of role models, and it wasn't their fault. It's not like they're out to just be malicious dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's like we're almost handed this playbook that was written for a game that no one even plays anymore. It'd be like oh man, I don't even have a good analogy right now, but it's we get this handed this playbook that's so archaic and it's so old school, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not even real. We're socialized at a young age as boys to not only not express emotions, but we shouldn't have them to begin with. But then we're told that the emotions that are okay are basically being angry and being horny, and still being happy, that
Yeah.
hangry, horny, and happy, we could there.
Mm-hmm.
And the boys will be boys, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
since when is violence just in our innate nature? Like, I didn't none
Mm-hmm.
of it made sense to me for a very long time. And um and so I really I did a men's workshop and course about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was called the New Masculine Program, and it really it was shadow work. We did like diving into our lineages, it was a lot of work with our ancestry,
Mm-hmm.
diving into our sexuality, our beliefs, relationships, and it was just so in depth, and it was so illuminating. And then I would look around. I would look around at the other men in my life, my friends, my brothers, my father figures, just strangers, and I would just see the way that in the past, where I would be like, dude, this guy's just bleh, he's just being
Mm-hmm.
an ape. But then as I started doing this work and I really started looking, I would see that they're not. You could see pain in their eyes. You see that they don't feel like they can fully express themselves. Maybe they don't even know how to. They don't have the language. Men don't have the language to say, this is how I feel, or even just to show up and hold space and listen and be like, hey, I hear you. I see you. You're held. You're safe. And allowing themselves to be held and be safe. Allowing themselves to let down those walls, let down those false barriers. And I could just see it, in so many men in my life, just kind of that silent cry for help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're not asking for help, but their behaviors and actions, and he's simply just the look in their eyes. So it's a silent cry for help. And not only that, but women, when I tell women about the work I do, or they ask about the work I do, and I tell them, they're like, oh my God, I have so many guys that need to take this. And I'm like, I hear
Mm-hmm.
you, and that's great. But unfortunately, it doesn't work unless the man chooses it for himself, which goes to, that's, both for men and women.
Hmm.
When it comes to doing the inner work, it doesn't work unless you choose it for yourself. You have to want it. You have to want to let go. You have to want to step into the unknown. And
Like you
so,
said earlier, sorry,
yeah. Oh
go on.
no, you're good. Yeah. And so what I do in the Authentic Brotherhood is, I mean, it's a men's group. So what we do, and so it's not therapy, it's not anything like that. It's men coming together. We do it virtually, so we meet, and we check in. And checking in is basically where we close the container. This is a very
Hmm.
common thing with any kind of group. We check in with where we're at. Maybe we even talk about the emotions, where we're feeling them in the body, and struggles, wins, victories, defeats. We share these things. We create this vulnerable space, and we close the container. And once that container is closed, that's where then we really dive into just sharing ourselves and sharing our experience and allowing ourselves to step into not only being sensitive and
Hmm.
being gentle. It's honestly, we step into being like water. Like Bruce Lee says, be like water, my friend. Water can flow or it can crash. And I feel like that's very much, it's not just, it's very much about, that's how we are as humans. But let's take it into the masculine aspect. Men can be gentle, they can be flowing, uh they can be in tune with their feminine side, with that, because it's all about balance. We all have feminine and masculine polarity.
Hmm.
So a man can totally, like, there's times where, if a man gets on the dance floor and he's all of a sudden moving his hips and he's popping, doing that, now he's more in tune with his feminine side. But then you can get a man talking about his, then a man's getting into his business. Well, he might very well step over into that masculine polarity, and now he's going to be more assertive. He's going to be more like the crashing water instead of the flowing stream. He's going to be like those crashing tides. And so really this group, the Authentic Brotherhood, assists men in stepping into being like water in within themselves, and being okay, like having a deeper understanding of this and a deeper acceptance of themselves, so that they can see that every part of themselves serves them, their masculine whole, their man self, and it all has a place. um and they can love themselves for that and accept themselves in that. And then but then what I do is, because this is very common with a lot of men's work, but I also like the Authentic Brotherhood to be based around solutions. Not just
Hmm.
solutions like there's problems and we're going to fix them, but no, not dwelling. We're not good. I don't like dwelling, where you just get caught in a loop. It's like, hey, if we got something that is bugging us, let's bring it out in the open. Let's
Hmm.
rectify it with awareness, and let's take some action to create something new. And so that is really what, and we all do that for each other in the Authentic Brotherhood. That's what it's all about, is all of us showing up, intimate connection with men, men being brothers with each other, and holding each other accountable, holding space for each other, and creating new possibilities by just opening up the floodgates, opening up awareness.
Well, that is super impressive. I mean, I wish more people thought like you, and more people, especially after listening to this. If you're listening and you're in the audience, then you know that being a man is just more than, like Dylan said, crushing a business deal or doing something else. It's a balance of both. We live in a world with duality or polarity, and the more we get in touch with our feminine side or masculine side, the yin, the yang, the better it is for us and the better we can show up in the world. And when I think of it, it's also very important because, like you said, Dylan, all of these rules and regulations were, they're old school, and they're from the times that men, just because of their physiological attributes, were given certain rules. But now we live in like a in like an era which is like a post movement era, let's say. So most of the world is now working through smartphones, and you don't need people to like pull things, rack things, walk so many miles, right? Because
Yeah.
that is why I think it doesn't make sense. And then also, I believe that we should work on this together, collaboratively as a whole society, because again, we're talking about, things like being equal and things like that, but reality is like we are far far away from reaching equality. Like I saw a report published by the Economic Forum of Gender Gap, and that says we're somewhere around 200 years from experiencing something like that.
Wow.
And yeah, it's shocking because you see everything that's happening in the world. You see the amount of, like, even in women empowerment, the movement that's going on, and how many people are being treated equal. It That number is surprising. And again, if you're listening to the show and you're like, okay, you know what, I can't give up on being a man all the time, and if you wanted to ride on the traditional masculinity wave, then let me tell you, there are also chances, if it doesn't really come from you naturally, there's also a very high likelihood that you will get into some kind of cardiovascular disease, engage in some kind of heavy drinking, or in extreme cases, even commit suicide. So watch out, everyone. Think about what you're getting yourself into, think about how the world is right now, and be nice. Be who you
Yeah.
truly are meant to be.
And be
Now,
nice to
Dylan,
yourself too.
exactly. Be
Yeah.
compassionate, be nice, like you mentioned earlier. Now, compassion, when I think of like these words, compassion and having these emotions and things like that, like, let me give you a story. When I was in university, I really didn't know which career path I wanted to follow, and I was guided I had a very minimalistic guidance of what I wanted to do. One thing that I knew in my head was like, whatever I do, I hope it be financially rewarding. So then I looked into finance as an option, but then I thought if you could deal with money, chances are you'd probably make a lot of it. But then I was really bad at math, so I threw that option away. The next big thing around in my environment at that time was marketing and advertising. So I studied that for about 4 years. Then I went on to do a lot of marketing and advertising roles. And there is where I understood the power of influencing people with what we put in front of them, right? And how much of an impact
Mm.
it has. When I was going through the I am USM website, one of the first words those hit me were things like support, heart-centered facility, reconnection with your deeper self, connection, meaning, love. And when I read things like this in the beginning, the marketer in me says that all of these words are used to target the emotional component of people that are landing on that website. But I know that's not it. And my heart says there's more to this. But tell me, why do people really connect with words like security, connection, meaning, love, all these positive frequencies that we see? Are people in the world missing these, and that's why they want to get more of it? Like, what's your take on it?
Ooh, that is a marvelous question. Uh, and I we are at the beginning, or rather, I mean, it began probably back from. I've actually read in some books that the big shift happened in 2012. We all thought it was
Mm-hmm.
the end of the world,
Mm-hmm.
which vibrationally it was. 2012 was the vibrational, that at the end of that world vibration, and we started entering into 4D and 5D, making that transition. And so these, but I think with those words, compassion, connection, empowerment, encouragement, love, heart centered, these are at the very core of the human experience. These are at the very core of, like, we are not human beings. Then it's not like we're all human and you can be spiritual. We are all
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, and we're all wearing these meat suits. We're all,
I
or
agree.
we're operating these human puppets, if you will, just to play, to experience. Like, it's like we're all, imagine a cell, and cell has all the cilia on it, all the little hairs. Well, each one of us is a cilia. So from our perspective, we seem isolated. We seem different. Maybe one of us seems longer or shorter than the other. But
Mm-hmm.
we are all the same thing. We are all expressions of the same thing, experiencing itself for the sake of experience, creation, joy, and growth, and play. And deep down we know that within ourselves. And I think it's especially disconcerting because, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, and he talks about COVID, the everything with COVID-19 being, in a way, the great revealer.
Mm-hmm.
It was through this last year that so much stuff rose to the surface. Stuff with the racial injustices, things in regards to, all the corruption in politics, and sex trafficking. The list goes on and on and on. And so it really brought to light all of these things, and now we're really seeing this massive awakening in human consciousness on a collective and global scale. And people are starting to say, you know what, this old ego based world, this infrastructure that is built on basically self-depreciation, this doesn't vibe with me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel true. And I think that's really what we're seeing is a shift from what looks good to what feels true. We've been so used to living in a world of, it's all about what looks good, like, oh, as long as, all the makeup, and even people that take being healthy to basically like taking working out to an unhealthy standard of, like,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all driven out of fear of not being good enough. So I'm going to go yoke myself out, which I've totally done too. Like, I've totally been like that
All of us would be in there.
that self-flagellation where you're just like, I
Uh,
gotta stay in shape or I'm not going to be good enough. And
exactly.
I think, though, that mindset, and those, especially, with marketing, ads, and just the way the world has been built, those things don't work. They don't make sense anymore. And so what we all really crave is truth. And what is true is connection, love, integrity, the very core of our human experience. Because it's not like you're walking down the street and you see someone and you just want to be mad at them or turn away. Like,
Yeah.
that's why smiles are so contagious. You walk by and a little kid smiles at you, and your heart can't help but just open and explode with love for this child. And you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, hey. And then someone else walks by and says, hey man, how you doing? And you're like, I'm great, man. How are you? We're both just humans floating around on a rock ball in space. This is great. And
True.
it's like, and that's, it's remembering. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
remembering. And that's really what I-awesome is um, about, which is, I-awesome is the bridge. Because this old fear-based world is built on competition.
Mm-hmm.
And this new love-based new earth is centered in love and cooperation. And collaboration is the bridge between competition and cooperation, and I-awesome serves as that bridge.
I love that. I love that saying. I'm gonna have to write it down.
Yeah. I heard that analogy, that way of that being spoken at a summit I spoke at not too long ago, a couple
Can you
weekends
repeat
ago.
that one more time for the listeners?
Yes, yeah, it's so we're moving from a fear-based world into we're moving from a fear-based world that is centered around and upholds competition, and into a love-based new earth that is centered around cooperation. And collaboration is the bridge from competition to collaborate, or from competition to cooperation. Yeah.
If I was in the audience that day, I would just stand up and start clapping. So I will just clap for you just right now. Thank you. You explained it really well. And again, when I look at it, I mean, all of those things that you said make so much sense. But I also think that all of those things I mentioned before, like being safe, having community, having love, having support, also comes from the basic human needs. Like when you look at the work from Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, you'd see, and for the people who not sure what we're talking about, Abraham Maslow was this guy who's dead now, and he created a pyramid that said all human beings have different needs in terms of priorities. So our basic needs are like food to survive, basic things like food, water, rest. And then you go up the pyramid, and then you have the need to be safe, and then comes the need to be loved, and then comes the need to be um, having a community and friends. So those are your basic needs. And then your ego steps in. So you want to be accomplished, you want to be proud, you want to get more of those dopamine responses in the brain. And then you look at something called self-actualization. One of the things that Maslow did not write or did not publish before he died was that there is another level after self-actualization, which is called transcendence. And he couldn't complete the work before he died. But some of the people who are researching Maslow are now coming up with this whole new theory of transcendence. And this is where what you just mentioned, Dylan, makes completely sense, because we're looking at spirituality, we're looking at connections beyond what you can see or sometimes even feel. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. Now, we look at humans, right? And then you have like some people who tell you like, hey, I don't need anyone to be around me because I am the captain of my own ship. And again, like you mentioned, these things can be fueled by overconfidence, ego. And then there are people who are always depending on each other. What So these are two different camps, right? I'm going on the extremes. What camp do you think humans were made to live in? Is it somewhere in the
Mm.
middle? Is somewhere on the
Um,
extremes?
yeah, I think it is. I think it is the middle, and it's that's why. And I love Eastern philosophy,
Hmm.
and a lot of Eastern philosophy, like Taoism and Buddhism,
Hmm.
Hinduism. They talk about, a lot of them that are centered around um, meditation. There's the talk of the middle way.
Hmm.
Um, and it's or we could even the yin and the yang. You're walking that middle line of the yin and the yang. You have one foot in the yin and one in the yang, and not necessarily like the I feel like instead of it being more of like, man, yeah, I would say it's the middle way, and
Hmm.
realizing that it doesn't have to be either or. It's how our um because each situation will call for you to show up differently. There will be times in your life where you will need to be the captain of your own ship, and you may need to enjoy some solitude. Or maybe you need to focus on, like, maybe there's something you just need to stick to.
Hmm.
Maybe a boundary gets violated, and you have to be like, I'm the captain of my own ship, and I'm going to put my foot down. Or it could even be, you know what? I'm a little drained. I'm going to go take my time by myself and recharge. But
Hmm.
then on the other side, there could be times where maybe you have a default of you always want to be alone in order to recharge. Well, maybe now you get in a romantic relationship and you find yourself in a place where you feel like you need to recharge. But now, since you're in a relationship, there's a new opportunity that presents itself where how do you recharge your batteries while still being in this space
Hmm.
with your partner? And so that poses a new opportunity of transcendence and of relearning and expanding yourself. So I feel like it's really yeah, instead of it being one or the other, it's like allowing yourself to expand. And the more you expand, the more you can contain within you. And the more you contain within you, the more tools you have for any group or any situation. And you also recognize that all of your emotions and feelings and thoughts all have a place. Nothing is missing. And
Hmm.
so there is a your anger serves a place, your compassion serves a place, your sadness and sorrow and grief serve a place, your laughter and joy serve a place. It all has a place, but you have to give it space within you to breathe. Otherwise it's going to get claustrophobic, and that's when you're going to start reacting out of those perceived negative emotions. But I think it's more of just the more you love yourself and expand yourself, there's more room within you for more of you to relax. And
Hmm.
then you can choose clearly about, in each circumstance or situation, how to properly apply these different facets of yourself.
I wish I would have realized this at an earlier age, because I've always been somewhat of an extremist, so I've always lived on either ends of the extreme. And it was my grandmother who first, because grandmoms have the wisdom of the world, she was the first one to tell me, like, there's always a balance in things, and you don't have to go through the extreme. And I was like, boring. That's not how it is.
Dude, I totally feel that. That was the story of my life.
I was like, nah, those are for everyone else, not for me. Again, some things were fueled by ego, some things were just wanting to be different, wanted everyone to have a different perception of myself. But then in recent times, one of my other missions have been to find ways with Shift with CJ. I'm trying to find ways, talking to people to extend human performance potential and lifespan. And it's funny that in my quest to finding these secrets of anti-aging and longevity and immortality and things like that, I have found more ways in how one can shorten their lifespan than extending it. Like, for example, we know that divorce rates are going crazy high all over the world up till COVID. And then we see that people who are actually either single or widowed or divorced, they are at a likelihood chance of dying twice as faster than people who are married. And then you think of humans, and then you have to be together, and you keep us aside because we're super complex. And then you see like microorganisms, or you see like ants, and you'd never see like one or two ants together because they're always living in a community, in a group, and they exist because they codepend on each other. And when you look at the essence of biology itself, like when you look at cells in our body, or even like cells in our body might be complex. So let's look at cells in a petri dish. You would find that cells start dying until and unless they have these neighbor cells, which are either loving, supporting, caring, and encouraging them to live. So what I'm trying to come at is like, I also feel that there should be a balance, but as a society, as all living things, the lone wolf mentality, like being on the extreme, doesn't work, and you have to kind of depend on others, the support from others, give support to others. It's not only about receiving. You have to add more energy in the energetic field, like you said, your smile, your joy, all these things play a big role. And when you look at like places where people have lived the longest, these are called blue zones. These are geographical areas around the world where people are sanitarians, like they're living above hundreds, or super sanitarians. And one of the biggest factors that is contributing to their longevity is the attention, the commitment, and being more responsible and being a part of a group, a family, and things like that. So I would also say somewhere in the middle is the best.
Yeah.
But you always
No, and
have to have people around you.
yeah, and I love how you referred to, sanitary um, and people that live, because in the Western world, people don't think we've been spoon fed that that's not possible. When
Mhm.
like back in the day, like people used to live like hundreds, almost even like over 1,000 years, like
Thousands
way
years,
back.
yeah.
Yeah, thousands of years. Like people would
Hmm.
there was our longevity was so long, but then the powers that be have convinced us otherwise, that like we live less than 100 years, and that's normal. And it's
Hmm.
like, what? And it's, oh man, it's just wild, like we're all Jedis, but we don't know that we are. We're all we're all brilliant masters, but we've been convinced that we're not. And but we're remembering. There's a massive remembrance occurring. And yeah, that lone
Massive
wolf
awakening.
mentality. Yeah, exactly. And that lone wolf mentality is very dangerous. It can be very deleterious. um and it's certainly not fun. I've
Hmm.
definitely, I did that lone wolf thing, and it was for healthy reasons when I first got
Hmm.
sober, and I really like retreated. I removed myself from the human game, if you will, to get in touch with source, get in touch with myself, and really reinvent my experience with life. And it served its purpose, but then it did get to a point, because it was like I isolated myself with getting sober, and then COVID hit, so then there was no choice but to
Ouch.
stay isolated. And but it was a beautiful experience,
Hmm.
but yeah, definitely that more egoic lone wolf mentality can certainly be deleterious.
When we talk about lone wolf, one of the things that comes to my mind is loneliness. While
Mm.
you were in COVID, or while you were having this episode where you were trying to recover and come back and bounce back, did you feel lonely by any chance?
Oh yes. Yeah. No, and it was, and I used to, and I almost for a while I struggled to even allow myself to be lonely, because I
Hmm.
didn't think, it was like, oh well, I need to be okay with being alone. It's
Hmm.
solitude. I did even tried rebranding it in all of these ways, but at the core, I felt lonely. It was and it can be,
Hmm.
and I think that's a really big obstacle for many people when it comes to walking, being spiritual, or even just opening up to that within themselves, um, is because you know people don't there's a lot of people that don't understand. There's a lot of people that do make fun. There's a lot of people that
Hmm.
will judge. And so to choose that path in spite of external circumstantial evidence, and in spite of that judgment, it takes a lot of fortitude. It takes a lot of commitment. Like, you are committed to nothing outside of yourself. You're committed
Hmm.
to the divinity within you. You're committed to God. You're committed, and not committed to God in the sense of I go to church every Sunday and I pray, and then I'm afraid of going to hell, so I make sure I do these things. It's like committed to God in the sense that you see God in everybody else, and you see that you are God and everything else is God. That flower is God. It's like that sermon where Buddha held the flower
Hmm.
and with all the high priests. And there was one high priest that understood it because he smiled. Just looking at the flower, he just smiled. He got it. He saw God. He experienced the divine. He experienced source.
And
And
this is coming back to the same thing that everyone in this universe, whether it's an animal, a human, anything, is really connected. And your actions, your thoughts, the way you look at things or do things is going to have an impact, whether you know it or not, into
yeah,
everyone else's and everything else's life.
yeah, even, I was down at the river the other day, and my partner, she was throwing out big rocks out into the
Hmm.
stream, and they would just poof, and you would just see these ripples, and they would go
Hmm.
out. But I was like, I picked up a really small pebble, and I just threw a really small pebble into a running river. But that little pebble, even though it was much smaller than the rock she was throwing, it still sent out ripples that I could see
Hmm.
go super far. They may have been smaller, but it sent out ripples nonetheless. And that was just a reflection to me of, it doesn't matter if it's the smallest thing in the world, if it's a smile, if you just say hello, nice shoes, holding the door open. Those
Hmm.
tiny little things, those small shifts, they send out huge ripples. They send out ripples that will touch way more than you're even aware of. And we all experience source in our own way every day. That's what like, it's what, when you look out your window, or maybe you're going for a walk and you see a gaggle of geese flying overhead, or you see some ducks in the pond. You hear the sound of frogs or birds in the trees. The wind kind of brushes by and kisses your cheek. These are, and for a moment, you feel, you just feel alive, like really alive. You feel life. And we all experience that. Um, but we just have different labels for it. But when we get rid of the labels and the dogmatic terminology, it's all the same thing.
Have you figured out a way to hack into this entire process? Like, what's your way to suddenly experience life at its best? Is it through gratitude? Is it through forgiveness? Is it through something else that, you're having a bad day and then you want to experience more of life and what life has? Or is it a journal? Like, have you found a way to hack it by any chance?
There's I am always experimenting with new things.
Hmm.
Things that have, but I would say in order to transcend what is experiencing or what you're experiencing, gratitude absolutely is a powerful one. Where I got sick recently, and I don't ever get sick. I never get sick because I always tell myself I never get sick, and I take really good care of myself. So that's not a thing. So I ended up feeling a little under the weather recently, and it bugged me. And so I decided to meditate. I was feeling kind of poopy, and I sat down and started meditating. And in that meditation, I just started saying thank you. I was just like, wow, thank you, Source, for this opportunity to accept myself, to love myself, and to allow this to be. And the moment I spoke that dialogue and I meant it and I surrendered, I felt every chakra in my system just just open up. It felt like the beam pouring out of my head. It was white golden light, and it just opened up. And it's not like all of a sudden I was like, now I'm all enlightened. And it was an enlightening moment, but it was more just I felt at ease. I felt peace because I accepted what I was experiencing, and I was grateful for it. I was grateful for the opportunities it presented for me to transcend and grow more aligned with myself. And so gratitude is, it's what brings magic into the world. It's the moment that you stop being grateful for life and for everything in your life. That's almost where you kind of you resign from happiness in a way. You kind of deny yourself happiness, because there's always gonna be things in life that we have bad days. Another thing that so I do like 5 pages of affirmations every morning,
Wow.
and
All right. How long
yeah,
does it
so
take
I
you?
about 30 minutes. So I
Okay.
set aside, yeah, like I set aside 30 minutes, and I read these affirmations, and they are things like, I am free of the fear of rejection. Rejection is a good and necessary thing to achieve success. I act without fear of rejection, and I feel energized, strong-minded, and confident. So things like that. And I have 5 pages of these for like everything across the board. There's also, I am consistently in a vibration to attract more of everything that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Or I am asserting the mastery of my real self. So I will say, and I am statements are huge. I actually also, another thing, uh, I buy brightly colored index cards. There, you can't see them
Mm-hmm.
because they're all over this part of my room. And I write
Okay.
affirmations, and I post them sneakily around my house. Um, and not always sneakily. These are very loud, but and but those are huge. Those are great reminders as well. Um, and some other hacks for altering your state of being in a moment's notice. Um, language
Mm-hmm.
is I would say, and you can start to develop your awareness about this through journaling, and really just pay attention to the language that you use with yourself. Like when you describe your emotions, what are you saying? Are you saying, I'm fucking pissed off? Because then when you say that, I'm fucking pissed off, take a moment and notice what is going on inside of you. I guarantee you that does not feel good when you say that. But if you
Mm-hmm.
go, man, I'm just peeved. I'm just a little peeved off. That right there, it breaks your emotional pattern. Um, or I'm like, man, I'm just tickled. I'm just tickled stinky right now. And you say
Mm-hmm.
something stupid and silly, you're not going to be as mad as if you're like, I'm fucking pissed. So you can also interrupt your emotional patterns with different use of language. And that's also, called reframing, which you can do that with any one of your experiences, where you change the way you perceive something, and it changes your experience with it. Um, and you're not diminishing the experience. You're not uh, bypassing the experience. You're just reframing it in a way that is more about um, gain than loss. You can turn any loss into a gain. It's just how you perceive it. Um, yeah,
That's
those are a few hacks.
those are pretty solid. And for everyone who's listening, and you guys are not driving, take some notes. Um, there's a woman by the name of Lisa Wimberger, and she has written about 78 books on neuroscience and owns a neurosculpting institute. She was on the show a few weeks ago, and one of the things that she also mentioned was the use of language, and the kind of language that you use for yourself or for others around you is constantly, your brain basically is constantly firing these neurons in a very specific manner. And if you constantly use the same language, which is disempowering, or for the lack of a better word, not good enough, then chances are your neurons will wire and fire so fast that it'll be very hard for you to get off that emotion. But if you change or you break that language pattern with something more empowering, something more positive, something which makes you believe in yourself or others around you, or gives you a sense of hope or faith in the world, that by itself changes your brain chemistry and neurochemistry. And now you start seeing better things in the world. When you mentioned gratitude, one hack that I like to do every time I'm stressed, doesn't matter, and this is free for everyone who's listening, play a gratitude game with yourself. So what I do is I'll just roughly in my mind time 3 to 5 minutes, and everything that I see, whether I'm in a train, whether I'm driving, whether I'm in a mall, I'd look at anything that my eyes set on and then appreciate one good thing about it. So let's take for an example, if I'm at the mall and if I see the escalator, and then I would just tell myself that I'm really grateful that we've gone, as humans, our technology has expanded so much, and now we're able to build all these complex machinery which help us carrying like heavier bags. And for like probably my grandmom or my mother, is really good because it eases them to go up, and then you go on top of the escalator and you see like a supermarket, and then you appreciate something about the supermarket, like I'm so grateful that I can get access to fresh food and groceries around me. And this just takes you 3 to 5 minutes, but what happens in the end of this game is that you turn that moment around, and you jump from one positive and grateful thought to the other, to the other, and now your brain starts playing this automatic game in front of you, that everything that you look on, even if it's your situation, you'll start appreciating something about it. So try that one for you guys who are listening.
I love that, dude. That is awesome. Like, and that's a really powerful thing. Is I'll do that because that's a with manifestation, law of attraction. Gratitude is also the key.
Mhm,
In order to attract more of what you want, you have to be grateful for what you have, because you attract what you are, not what you want. So that
mhm,
means in order to receive what you want, you have to be vibrationally on the level of exactly what you want. And so with that, saying I am wealth. Well,
mhm,
then what is that to be wealth? Well, now, but so in order to be wealth, I have to believe that when I say I am wealth in the now, I have to believe that. Well, how do you believe that when your subconscious might be firing off? Be grateful for the things you have. Look around you. Be like, wow, I am
mhm,
wealth. I'm so grateful for all this abundance, for all these reminders of my wealth. And then the more that, that's like my chapter I mentioned earlier, is being is the
mhm,
nature of becoming. There is no outside you.
mhm,
Everything, and there is no future self, there is no past self. Everything exists in the now. So whoever the person that you place outside of yourself in the future, like one day, that's the man I want to be or the woman I want to be. No, that person isn't who you want to be, isn't 10 years from now. It's
mhm,
available to you right now. So in order to become it, you be it now. So, if you wanted to be a millionaire, well, what does a millionaire sleep like? What does a millionaire eat like? What kind of clothes does a millionaire wear? How many hours a night does a millionaire sleep? What is the state of a millionaire's bed? What is the state of a millionaire's kitchen? What kind of silverware does a millionaire use? What kind of car does a millionaire drive? How does a millionaire spend or invest their money? How do they not spend or invest their money? And as you start being this, then
mhm,
vibrationally the universe just starts giving you what you are, because
mhm.
it's not about what you want, it's about what you are. And gratitude is a wonderful way to remind yourself of what you are and be grateful for what you are and bring yourself back up into that high vibrational state when you falter.
I love that. I love that you're talking about frequency and vibration, because I think I mentioned it earlier in the podcast for everyone who's listening. Everything that you can see and probably things that you cannot see right now is vibrating, right? You can't see them, but they're vibrating at a frequency. They're vibrating at, it has a big vibration to it. And then, like Dylan just mentioned, when you are, let's say, thinking of becoming a millionaire and doing all those things, or when you are looking for a partner and like at the dinner table, you just, put an extra plate and just imagine yourself of sitting and dining with your future partner. And how would that be? You're you have a very big change in your vibrational shift, and as you start vibrating to these higher frequencies, anything with a similar frequency, like a potential partner, $1 million or whatever, start vibrating at a frequency, and you guys come closer together in proximity. And this is the genius way of the universe self-organizing itself. uh, and yeah, this is just beautiful. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dylan, it's been an amazing time talking to you. I think we could just go on for hours and hours talking about so many
I know.
things.
I can't believe it. The time's already up.
Yeah. And so before we leave, tell us, if you look back, I mean, you're pretty young, but if you had to go back in the past, let's say you had this magical ability to go back in the past and give your younger self a piece of advice or two pieces of advice, or how many ever you want, what would that be?
Oh, that's a
Knowing
fantastic
all
question.
that you know right now.
Um, I would say there is nothing wrong with you, and you are worth it.
Mhm.
And
Beautiful.
it's probably what I would say, because those are the things that I, really um, struggled with, as a kid, was not feeling I was worthy of love, really just worthy of anything good. And
Mhm.
and then yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. Uh, like, you are perfect as you are. Like, just be you. It's probably what I would tell myself, uh, my little teenage self.
Mhm. And that is super powerful. Like, the if you could, I think I saw a TED talk couple of years ago. I'm not too sure if it was Marissa Peers, but basically she asked everyone or her clients to go in front of a mirror, and this is probably the mirror that you use the most amount of time during the day, and write on it in any shape or form that I am enough. And every time you look at yourself, keep reminding yourself of this positive affirmation that you are enough, no matter the situation, no matter the circumstances, no matter what's going on right now or what's going on in the future. You should know that however you are, broken, unbroken, happy, excited, curious, confused, you are more than enough to operate in that situation. And just by knowing that, just by reiterating all those things, just by having those neurons fire and wire in your brain, you're going to technically just resolve any situation that comes in your life and be able to be more present into it, because in the back of your mind, hopefully you do it enough times that it enters your subconscious. You would know that, that's it. I'm enough. There can be, I'm not going to give up on this. I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to move, or get scared or just make a loud noise, because I know I'm capable of dealing with it. So thank you for sharing that. That is a powerful message for everyone. And Dylan, if
Yeah.
people want to find you, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it through the website? Are you on Instagram? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm at I-awesome. I mean, so if you enroll at I-awesome, IAUSM.com,
Mhm.
you will see me in there. You can also email me at dylan@iawesome.com for more information on the Authentic Brotherhood. The Authentic Brotherhood is on Facebook. There's a page and there's also a private group.
Mhm.
But we do all the events on I-Awesome in our free events. And actually, if you on Facebook, if you do at Authentic Masculine, that will take you to the Authentic Brotherhood page. And on Instagram, I have if you do lover underscore official music. Lover is my moniker for my
Mhm.
artistry, and so lover underscore official music, and that is my music Instagram, and you can follow me on there.
I'm just gonna do that right now.
Nice, yeah, and I have a spot. It's lover with a period at the end, but they didn't
Okay,
have
so
that.
lover with a period and then authentic.
I think lover with a period is how you'll find me on Spotify, but for
Okay,
Instagram, I believe it's just lover underscore official music.
lover underscore official. Got it.
You'll Yep, you'll see me in the leopard print coat or cheetah print coat. So
Love your hairstyle, dude. Love it.
thanks, man.
All right, this has been amazing. I've had a great time talking to you, and I really appreciate all the good work that you are doing through your life experiences, through the things that you're supporting, through the things that you're putting out, and through your music. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. This has been an absolute pleasure.
And this is me, CJ, signing off from Shift with CJ podcast. You guys have an energetic day, a week, a month, a year, a lifetime ahead of you. Take care now.